Hello and welcome to IABM TV. I'm delighted to be joined by Phil from PlayBox and John from IO Media today. Without any further ado, I'm diving straight into the first question, and I'm going to ask Phil for a short elevator pitch for PlayBox product offering.
Most of our business has been outside of the UK. We are really very strong in the international markets. So OTT in the last 2 years has been our main driver, and then traditional playout / IP playout is where we're going at the moment.
And John, IO Media has a product called Live News Systems. Can you summarise that for us?
Yeah, live news and sports systems, because it operates anywhere where there's a need for live instantaneous reaction to rundowns, to editing and so on. So in one sentence, it's a complete editorial control everywhere at the touch of a button. And in 3 words, it's man, moss, and unique.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, John. And Phil, coming back to you, do you think our industry is a particularly collaborative one?
Yeah, I think there's more and more collaboration going on from the PlayBox side. We're just specialists in playout, and we don't really understand news systems, so we pull in specialists to help us on the news side. What I have noticed is probably the last 5 years, with the exception of the large organizations, there is more and more collaboration going on, and we all find it beneficial. As an example of that, John and I are working on a project where I have an inquiry for a new system for a PlayBox customer. John has the solution, so jointly we work together and co-present to the customer.
And John, how important is the willingness to change in our industry?
I think if we think back to January, February, March of this year, and the onslaught of COVID, lockdowns and so on, which is when the industry had to change. I think the industry was talking about change with the cloud and other systems, etc. But it looked like it was for general use 2 or 3 years off, as these things quite often are in the broadcast industry. But when COVID hit and the lockdowns hit, people realized they had to change that day. So what that did is it brought all the new technology forward, and of course it worked. It's just that people with write-off plans and people with favorite suppliers and so on would have rathered that it took longer. Then it couldn't anymore. So that was the most dramatic change I think that the industry has had since Marconi invented it.
And Phil, tell me more about the origins of the collaborative relationship between PlayBox and IO Media.
Yeah, so we've had a relationship with LMS for approximately 6 years. We started around 2013, 2014 with a major African news project. The customer had purchased PlayBox playout equipment. As I said earlier, we know about playout. Obviously, we know about MOS and things like that, but we're not experts. And what we were looking for is to work with a company who came from a journalistic background, understood the workflows, how the presenters actually presented, more than just the technical side. And that's really where we got involved with John. We shopped around and came up with what we saw and thought was the best solution for the customer. And the relationship since 2013 or 14 has really gelled, and it's been beneficial where we've custom developed stuff together. And it works for me and it works for John.
And so John, what is the importance of companies within our industry working together?
Well, as Phil just mentioned, we came together, IO Media Group consists of very experienced people who've worked in primarily news and sports startups around the world for the last 25 years. And being producers, being journalists, we had always been stuck with the kind of operating systems that the people who traditionally wore white coats used to come up with and say, here, it works this way, go and work out how you can tell stories using it. which has never been comfortable for the people trying to tell stories with video and audio. So we were a collaborative group of people who found it very easy to work with PlayBox to come up with a different type of GUI and a different type of control mechanism, which enabled creative people to work creatively rather than, the computer says no to steal a line. So this only comes about, to answer your question, because it is important for companies in our industry to work together to leverage off specialities that they've built up over a period of time.
Yeah, I'm going to just throw in a random question here. Is that because the customer really kind of wants to buy into a solution, and that companies work together in our industry because they know that, you know, their part of the solution works really well with someone else's part, so therefore it's a much more, you know, it's a natural thing to collaborate in that way?
Okay, so what we find, you're absolutely right, Darren. Some clients want to stick with a vendor they know. Problems that people have had historically is you buy software from a vendor, new software, playout software, graphics, etc. When it comes time to actually testing it and it hasn't integrated properly, who do you blame? It's not my fault, it's not the other person's fault. So we find that 40% of the time that works, but then on the other hand, we find we have your equipment, we want to save money, so it's an investment issue. What can we integrate onto your platform? Yeah, and we at PlayBox don't do anything other than playout software, OTT software. And then we come to specialists like John, whose company does news. And I don't believe you do anything other than news and live sports.
No, we want to stick to our knitting, and we want to develop that further because there's a lot more in it for the end user than how the server works, which is why we don't make servers. And again, that goes back to our man and Moss configuration. I've been in the broadcast industry long enough to remember where if you had Marconi equipment, you wore white coats, and the culture of the company was probably British. If you worked in an operation that was RCA, you didn't wear white coats, and your culture was very much more American. Even the control rooms looked different. Now, that has continued through 3 generations since. But back then, almost as though the name Marconi means anything, they were the people who were the repository of all wisdom about this. It's now changed dramatically. And as I said before, I think the COVID lockdown forced that, because there were products that were better than other products which had the same logo on them. At freeing up the producers of programs to be able to create the kind of programs that, albeit they were doing before, but then they're now finding, even being able to use Zoom. Skype was around for a long, long time, but it didn't really catch on the same way Zoom has. And I think it's going to be very difficult to produce news programs and sports programs in the future without Zoom, because it has become part of the way we tell stories, and it's very cost efficient, and it puts the onus back onto, and TVU and LiveView and so on are kind of in that area as well. So those things have changed, but they're not the repository of one manufacturer or one set of brains. We can see VizRT and NewTek getting closer together. We can see Vidigo and Chiron getting closer together to the extent that they've bought each one. But they're still developing those products more or less along individual lines, and they just like to be able to put them together, which you can do with Moss anyhow on most occasions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I was just trying to make the point really that in my experience anyway, customers today have been bitten in the past over things like interoperability. Therefore, if they're looking for a solution and one of their partners that they've chosen recommends another partner, they're more than likely to accept it now, because they know if that partner has already established working relationships, then when the install goes ahead, they're not going to have those interoperability issues that they were having, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
That's right. And we, even though I've mentioned MOS 3 or 4 times already, we prefer to work directly with the manufacturer, which is why we work directly with PlayBox, so we don't rely on some other protocol to make sure it works. Likewise with Chiron, likewise with VisRT. That a direct connection is always more reliable than having to rely on a protocol which everybody says, oh, if it's MOS, it's fine, but there are actually 5 or 6 MOSs. So, you pick the wrong one and you don't have a solution.
Yeah, exactly. So
Darren,
Phil, sorry.
There are a lot of great system integrators around the world who can integrate systems together. And what we were finding is when we worked with SIs, the issue of the integration with third-party equipment would always come back to us. And so we're getting pretty firm now on our product will work with this, and the other. We can't work with everybody. And it saves us time, it makes the customer experience better, and we get a better understanding with the vendors that we work with. So we have a really good understanding of how LNS works. LNS have a good understanding of how PlayBox works. So when we do development work, it doesn't take as much time as it would if you came with a third-party company you've never heard of before. So I just wanted to add that, sorry.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with trust.
Yeah, exactly, Jim.
You trust the people you're working with, because if they have made any mistakes in the past, you can judge their character and whether they owned up to it, how quickly they were to fix it, etc. And going forward, it's a lot easier to work with people who you understand and they understand you.
Yeah, thanks for that, chaps, because I think that's, the collaboration is almost an overused word these days. And I think just putting a little bit more flesh on those words has really helped demonstrate the partnership capability of the two businesses. So Phil, coming back to you, what is the synergy between PlayBox and Live News Systems, and how can they best work together?
Okay, well, the synergies are that Live News System is a specialist in the area. We're a specialist in our playout area. And it's the integration, the synergy. We save in various areas. We approach a customer jointly together. So neither party misleads the customer. The customer has a better understanding, which generates into a happy customer. I think that's the main synergy, is the benefit to the customer of a working system that's easy to use. John, would you like to add on that?
Yeah, again, it goes back to the fact that we've developed this system in LNS's case from scratch, from a different perspective of what's required in newsrooms and sports control rooms today compared with previously. You could even say prior to COVID. And we've developed that relationship with PlayBox. So that they are basically the same system, but we have these specialists who have different t-shirts on, like you've got your IABM t-shirt on, I've got my LNS t-shirt on, etc. But and Phil would have his PlayBox t-shirt on if they had any. But we all work together and we all understand one another. So it's actually the same thing with a different product name.
Yeah, exactly. And John, finally, over to you in terms of, do either of you have any exciting plans to work together again in the future? Well,
we certainly do. And as Philip just mentioned, we continue to do. I mean, some exciting news that we have at IO Media Group this week is that stacked up against hundreds of other technology companies in the UK, we have been awarded a substantial grant from Innovate UK, which is a government instrumentality to push high-end technology in the UK. So we will be developing further our product, and we'll be doing it with PlayBox.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you, Darren, and see you, Phil.